In the village of Lycia, nestled like a jewel in the mountains, generations thrived under the watch of ancient guardian spirits. They were the keepers of balance, the protectors of the mortal realm. But that was before the war of shattered vows, before betrayal, before Kresh was cursed. I wiped the sweat from my brow, the scent of rosemary and sage from my mortar, usually calming my mind. But not today. Today, the rumors brought by an injured hunter at dawn haunted my thoughts. "He's growing more aggressive," Elder Thomas had warned, his face grim. 3 hunting parties attacked in as many weeks. The creature must be destroyed before winter. The creature, Kresh. Once the revered mountain guardian, now he was feared as the shadow of the forgotten peaks. Villagers whispered tales of obsidian scales that drank the light, of molten gold eyes burning with hatred, and a roar that could shatter stone itself. I'd nodded along, but the hunter's wounds told a different story. They weren't the savage gashes of a predator. They were precise, calculated strikes, warnings, not killing blows. "You're thinking about him again," my younger sister Nari said from the doorway. She was only 16, but already a promising healer, though she didn't have my gift, or curse, the ability to feel the emotions of others as if they were my own. "Someone should," I replied, putting down my pestle. "Everyone's so quick to call him a monster." "Because that's what he is," Nari insisted. "Grandmother's stories say the curse twisted him, turned his scales black with hatred." I sighed. Hatred born of what? That's the question no one asks. Later that night, long after Nari was asleep, I slipped into our small library. My fingers drifted over ancient leather spines until they found the one I was looking for, a hidden volume about the guardian spirits. "The Azure Guardian," I read aloud by candlelight, "whose scales reflected the sky and whose heart beat in rhythm with the mountains." My breath caught as I turned to a passage I'd found only days before. "When betrayal turns protector to destroyer, when light becomes shadow, look not to weapons but to courage. The cursed guardian waits for one who sees with the heart, whose touch may heal what magic has broken." Suddenly a vision flooded my mind. I saw massive, shadowed scales and felt a pain so ancient, so deep, it made me gasp. It wasn't hatred, it was agony, a crushing loneliness that had festered for centuries. The next morning I packed my bag, herbs, bandages, and a small dagger, more for cutting plants than for protection. I left Nari a note, a half-truth about gathering rare mountain herbs. At the edge of the village, I looked back at the only home I had ever known. If the stories were true, I might never see it again. But fear wasn't what I felt. It was a strange, quiet resolve. "Every creature deserves compassion," I whispered, repeating my grandmother's words like a mantra. "Even those we fear most." As I turned towards the mist-shrouded peaks, I couldn't explain the certainty that guided my steps. Maybe it was a healer's instinct, or maybe it was a connection to a creature everyone else had forsaken. I was about to seek out the shadow of the forgotten peaks, armed not with steel, but with empathy and the cryptic promise of an ancient text. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. If you're captivated by the story of Mira and Kresh, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss what happens next. See you in the next chapter. The path to the forgotten peaks narrowed as Mira climbed, the trail dissolving into a treacherous scramble. A biting wind whipped her cloak around her slender frame. The air grew thin, and a deep silence fell, broken only by the distant cry of a mountain hawk. Down in the village, they said nothing grew near Kresh's domain, but Mira found life. Silvery lichen clung to the rocks, and hardy mountain sage pushed through cracks in the stone. Life, stubbornly persisting. She gathered samples, partly as a cover story, but mostly out of genuine curiosity. "Even here," she murmured to herself, "where everyone believes nothing can survive." As the sun set, painting the peaks in shades of amber and rose, Mira reached a high plateau, Massive stones, deeply scored with what looked like giant claws, marked the entrance to Kresh's lair. It was a jagged maw in the mountainside, and as she stepped inside, the temperature dropped instantly. Her breath plumed in the dim, cold air. "I know you're here," she called out, her voice echoing against the ancient stone walls. "I've come alone, and I mean no harm." Silence was her only answer, but she felt she wasn't alone. Her unique empathic gift tingled, sensing emotions swirling in the deep shadows, surprise, a thick layer of suspicion, and beneath it all a pain so profound it made her own eyes water. "My name is Mira," she said, venturing deeper into the cavern. "I'm a healer from the village of Lycia." A low, guttural growl rumbled through the cave, sending a shiver down her spine. "Lycia sends a girl to finish what their warriors could not." The voice was like granite grinding against steel, rough and ancient from centuries of disuse. Mira turned toward the sound. "I'm not here to fight. I came because of what I read about you, about who you were, before." The darkness shifted. Massive, obsidian-black scales absorbed the faint light, and two golden eyes ignited in the gloom like twin suns. Kresh emerged, far larger than any story had described. His serpentine body was coiled protectively, his great wings folded tight against his back. "That guardian is dead," he snarled, his teeth like polished daggers. Mira held her ground, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Is he? Or is he just trapped beneath a curse?" Kresh's massive head swung toward her, his nostrils flaring. "You know nothing." "I know you've been alone for centuries," she replied softly. "I know you were betrayed by the very people you swore to protect. I know your wounds go far deeper than scales." His powerful tail lashed out, smashing against the stone and sending fragments skittering across the cave floor. "Pretty words from prey. Your village sends hunters to kill me, and now a healer with honey-coated lies?" "They don't know I'm here," Mira admitted honestly. "They would have tried to stop me." A flicker of confusion crossed Kresh's reptilian face. "Then why come? To satisfy your curiosity? To see the monster before it's finally slain?" Mira took a hesitant step forward, and then another. "To see if the ancient texts were true." Kresh reared back as she approached, his wings flaring in a clear warning. "Stay back. My touch brings only destruction." "I don't believe that," Mira whispered, her slow advance not faltering until she stood directly before him. His enormous head towered over her, his breath hot against her skin. In a movement that surprised even herself, Mira raised her hand. Kresh flinched, but didn't retreat as her fingers hovered just inches from his snout. "May I?" she asked quietly. His golden eyes widened in disbelief. When he didn't answer, she gently, carefully, pressed her palm against the cold, rough scales of his face. A powerful shudder ran through his massive form. For a fleeting moment, Mira saw it, a flicker of brilliant azure beneath the cursed obsidian blackness. His true color, buried for centuries. "How long?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Has it been since someone touched you without trying to cause you harm?" Kresh's eyes slowly closed, and when he spoke, his voice was a broken, shattered whisper. "I have forgotten the count of the years." In that vulnerable moment, the barriers between them seemed to dissolve. Guardian and human, monster and healer, all of it fell away, replaced by a simpler truth. Two lonely souls, finding an unexpected connection in a single, gentle touch. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this story, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more tales from Forgotten Realms. Until next time. Days turned into weeks, and my visits to Kresh's lair grew longer, more frequent. I told Nari I was searching for rare herbs, a half-truth that tasted bitter on my tongue. How could I explain I was spending my days with the very monster she feared? The deception was a necessary evil for now. Kresh, for his part, slowly shed his hostility. The bristling scales and menacing growls gave way to a grudging acceptance, and then something akin to trust. He began to let me tend to the deep, painful fissures that marred his ancient hide, cracks that had formed over centuries of petrification and pain. One evening, as the sun bled orange and purple across the cavern entrance, I smoothed a salve of mountain herbs and honey over a particularly jagged section near his shoulder. "This should help," I murmured, my voice soft in the vast space. "Though I've never treated a guardian before." He watched my hands with those mesmerizing golden eyes, a guarded fascination in their depths. "Few humans ever tried," he rumbled, his voice like stones grinding together. "Even before the curse, most preferred to worship from a distance." "Tell me about before," I prompted gently, not looking up from my work. "Before the war of shattered vows." His gaze went distant, lost in a time I could only imagine. "We were 7 guardians," he began, "each protecting a different domain. Mine were these mountains, and the skies above them. My scales—" He paused, and I felt a tremor run through him, a ghost of a memory. "They reflected the heavens, azure in the daylight, midnight blue under the stars." "What happened?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The muscles beneath my touch tensed. Humans grew greedy for power. They convinced Soleth, the guardian of magic, to share forbidden knowledge. When the rest of us opposed it, she turned on us. She betrayed us. One by one, my kin fell or fled into exile. I alone remained to face her. "And she cursed you," I finished for him, the ancient texts echoing in my mind. "A living death," Kresh confirmed, a deep resonant bitterness in his tone. "My form was twisted, my connection to the mountains severed. She bound me to this rage, this isolation, and fueled the curse with the fear and hatred of the very humans who once revered me." A heavy silence settled between us, thick with the weight of forgotten ages. Then I remembered something else, a cryptic line from the scrolls. "The texts," I said, "they mentioned you could take another form." His golden eyes narrowed instantly. "Another of the curse's cruelties. I retain the ability to shift shape, as all guardians once did. But what?" I pressed. Instead of answering, he pulled away from my touch. The air around him began to shimmer, like heat rising from sun-baked stones. His colossal form contracted, scales flowing like liquid shadow, folding in on themselves. Where the immense dragon had stood, a man now knelt on the stone floor. I gasped, my hand flying to my mouth. He was tall, with a powerful build, skin like burnished bronze, and hair as black as a starless midnight. He possessed an otherworldly beauty, a fierce grace that even the raw pain twisting his features couldn't diminish. And his eyes were unchanged, molten gold, burning with an ancient light. He grimaced, his body trembling with a violent, unseen strain. "The curse makes this form unbearable." He swayed, and I rushed forward, my healer's instincts taking over. "Change back! Don't hurt yourself!" "I wanted you to see," he forced out between clenched teeth. In a dizzying rush of shadow and scales, the transformation reversed, and the dragon collapsed onto the cavern floor, breathing in ragged, heaving gasps. I knelt beside his massive head, my own heart hammering against my ribs. "Why? Why would you show me that?" "So you understand," he rasped, his voice weary and strained. "So you understand what was taken. Guardians walked among humans once. We shared knowledge, celebrated your festivals. Now, I exist only as this monster, or in agony." On impulse, I leaned forward and pressed my forehead against his cool, scaled brow. "You're not a monster to me." In that moment, a fragile, unspoken understanding passed between us. Vulnerability for vulnerability, truth for truth. Later, as twilight painted the cave in shades of violet, he revealed one last secret. "The curse can be broken," he said, his voice a low whisper. "But the price is too high." "Tell me," I insisted, my gaze locked with his. "It requires a willing sacrifice," he said, his golden eyes holding mine captive, "a heart given freely with full knowledge of what I am, both the shadow and the light." My own heart stuttered. "A heart? As in love?" "A heart as in everything," he replied, his voice final, "and I would never ask that of anyone, not even for freedom." That night I walked home beneath a canopy of brilliant stars, my thoughts in a dizzying spiral. The image of Kresh, both dragon and man, was burned into my mind, and with it, a terrifying, exhilarating certainty. My path and his were now somehow completely intertwined. Thank you so much for journeying with me through this chapter. If you're as captivated by Mira and Kresh's story as I am, please hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. See you in the next video. Autumn painted the valley in shades of amber and crimson. As the leaves fell, so did the walls around Mira's secret. Her frequent disappearances into the mountains sparked whispers in the village. "Discovering rare herbs," she'd say, a half-truth to deflect their curious stares. But Nari, her wise old friend, saw through the stories. Without a word, she'd simply pack extra food into Mira's satchel, a silent blessing for the journey ahead. Meanwhile, in Kresh's cavern, a quiet transformation was taking place. Where once there were only jagged obsidian scales, patches of brilliant azure now gleamed, signs of Mira's healing touch. The dark, cold cave had softened. Firs warmed the corners, shelves she had carved held her herbs and scrolls, and a small fire pit crackled merrily where they'd share their evening meals. "You've domesticated a dragon's lair," Kresh rumbled one night, a rare hint of amusement in his deep voice. Mira just smiled, stirring a fragrant stew. "I've made it habitable for a human visitor," she corrected. "There's a difference." Their nights were filled with stories that bridged the gap between their two worlds. Kresh spoke of ancient stars that had long since shifted in the sky, of lands changed by the relentless march of time. In return, Mira shared tales of her village, her passion for healing, and her dreams of knowledge that lay beyond the valley's edge. Trust bloomed in the firelight, a fragile but powerful thing. One evening, after weeks of careful preparation, Mira held out a new salve. "Try again," she urged, her voice gentle. "This should help with the pain." Kresh hesitated, the memory of agony clear in his eyes, but he nodded. The familiar, painful shimmer of magic enveloped him. He clenched his teeth, his body contorting as he shifted from dragon to man. This time, when the light faded, he stood trembling but upright, wrapped in the cloak Mira had brought. "Better?" she asked, her heart hammering against her ribs. "The pain is manageable," he admitted, flexing his long, elegant fingers. He was human, yet not. Mira stepped closer, offering a hand for support. The moment his skin touched hers, a surprising warmth spread between them. They just stood there for a beat, connected, a silent wonder passing between them. "Walk with me," she whispered, leading him toward the mouth of the cave. Outside, the moonlight washed the plateau in a sea of silver. Kresh tilted his face to the sky, his expression one of such profound longing it made Mira's own heart ache. "How long," she asked softly, "since you've seen the stars as a man?" His voice was a mere whisper. "Centuries. I'd forgotten how different they look through these eyes." They walked along the moonlit mountainside, Kresh's steps growing steadier as he reacquainted himself with his human form. When the pain finally returned, they sat on a stone outcropping, looking down at the sleeping village below. "Your home looks so peaceful from here," he mused. "It's hard to believe they're planning my destruction." Mira's head snapped toward him. "What do you mean?" A deep sadness entered his voice. I've seen it, Mira. Warriors training, new weapons being forged. They'll come with the first snow, when they think I'm at my weakest. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced Mira's heart. I'll talk to them. I'll make them understand. That you've befriended their monster? Kresh interrupted gently. They won't listen. Fear has too deep a hold on them. Without thinking, Mira reached out, her hand cupping his cheek. Then we'll find another way. He covered her hand with his own, turning to press a soft, tender kiss against her palm. It was a gesture that stole her breath away. Mira, he murmured, her name a prayer on his lips. I've lived countless lifetimes in darkness. These moments with you, they are worth whatever comes next. The confession hung in the air, heavy and beautiful. All hesitation melted away as Mira leaned in, her lips meeting his. It was a kiss that held centuries of loneliness and weeks of quiet connection, a moment of pure, impossible magic. When they finally broke apart, his golden eyes held a light she'd never seen before. Hope. I love you, she whispered against his lips, the words feeling more true than anything she'd ever said. Monster, guardian, whatever you are, I love all of you. As she spoke, a powerful ancient magic answered. A shimmer of azure light flashed across Kresh's skin. The curse trembled, shaken to its very core by her love. But for now, it held.